Viewer discretion is advised.
Bobby Petrino was too much of a coward to finish out his only season in the NFL. And more than any on-field incompetence, that's what earns him this honor. Petrino joined Atlanta already behind the 8 ball. The Falcons lost Michael Vick to prison and sent their backup Matt Schaub to the Texans. After going 3-10, Petrino's sudden mid-season resignation to become Arkansas's head coach was more spineless than an octopus. We know the worst loss in Falcons history, but their biggest home loss was a 42-point beating by the Baltimore Colts in 1967. Johnny U tossed 4 TDs against the Falcons team in just their second year of existence. I'd say this was a moment they've never recovered from, but we all know which moment that was. After all that, you just let Matt Ryan go. That ought to trigger you. Wait, you did the same thing to Julio Jones. Okay, we know about 28-3, but what about all these other blown leads? If you think you're going to have a good year, just remember Marcus Mariota is your starting QB. Bobby Petrino. It took another 3 whole decades to find a coach who failed to make it through a full season as a head coach. In fairness to Bobby Petrino, who left Louisville to become head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, he thought he was inheriting a favorable situation with Michael Vick at quarterback, until Vick left to be the starting QB for the Fort Leavenworth prison team for 2 years. They might have been able to turn to a potential franchise quarterback in Matt Schaub, but whoops, they had traded him to the Texans right before the season. Alright, that's all the fairness I have for Bobby Petrino, and I don't care that he was carting out Joey Harrington, Chris Redmond, and Byron Leftwich. The Falcons were equally inept on offense and defense, finishing 29th in scoring on both sides of the ball despite having 2 bright coordinators in Hugh Jackson and Mike Zimmer. Actually, can I walk that one back? After realizing he sucked liquid ass like the bathrooms at Fogo de Chao, Petrino became interested in the Arkansas job and knew that the only way to negotiate for it was to resign from his current post in Atlanta. Quitting would have been one thing, as it made sense because he was garbage, but the way he did it was another. Instead of telling his players face to face that he was leaving, Petrino left goodbye notes on all of their lockers. And this was, of course, just 24 hours after he had shook Arthur Blank's hand and assured him he had no plans of leaving. Petrino quickly hopped on a plane and sung the Arkansas fight song while the Falcons watched the press conference on TV. Joey Harrington and lawyer Malloy publicly called him a coward as he braced for all the criticism he would receive. Since it was opened in 2017, Mercedes-Benz Stadium has been an innovator on all fronts of the stadium experience. Listen to the reasons why it comes in ranked number 2.
Yeah, that, for me, I think that might be my number 1 stadium.
Really?
It is that nice. That stadium is the most innovative stadium besides maybe SoFi, where like football is played and it's taken like seriously. And what I mean by that, it's not just like a concert space or anything like that. They have so much that has like pieces of Atlanta in there. It's artists, it's like local vendors as well. On top of that, the thing that stands out to me the most, besides how beautiful it is, the roof is freaking insane. It's their sustainability stuff is like crazy. Like they have so many like solar cells that they're able to power all of their home games for the Falcons and also for Atlanta United. I think it's only 10% of the waste that they get goes like into landfills. Everything else is recycled or composted.
I had no idea that Megatron's butthole was that efficient.
Atlanta, you blew a 25-point lead in the final 17 minutes of a Super Bowl without even giving up an onside kick. That shouldn't even be possible, and yet you did it. And to make matters worse, you did it to Tom Brady's team, meaning we now have to listen nonstop to how he shits golden bricks, all because you doofuses didn't just run the ball and kick a fucking field goal inside the Pats' 25-yard line in the 4th quarter. Oh, and great job letting a Super Bowl clinching interception fall into Edelman's hands. Wonderful. Don't worry, it gets worse. This was the high point of the best run in team history while having the best quarterback in team history, Matt Ryan. Before Matt Ryan showed up, you never had back-to-back winning seasons in 40 years and 1 Super Bowl appearance where the Broncos beat the fuck out of you and your star defensive player got caught soliciting an undercover female cop for sex the night before the game. The most iconic and memorable player to ever wear your team's jersey is a guy who electrocuted dogs for fun. For the rest of time, you will have big names on offense and still finish 7-10 every year because your defense is soft faster than baby shit. Fuck you. Freddie Falcons. Poor Freddie abuses hard drugs, and considering all the blown leads his team has had over the years, I do not blame him one bit. In addition to the extremely concerning look his eyes give off, the wild, unkept look of his feathers make him look like he just passed out drunk at a bar. Considering the team name, Atlanta could have done a much better job. Rating, 1 out of 10. Atlanta Falcons, Matt Ryan. An easy choice here. Ryan has thrown for almost 60,000 yards, 367 touchdowns, made 4 Pro Bowls, won an MVP, and came excruciatingly close to winning the franchise its only Super Bowl in 2016. He's kinda boring and will never wow you with his physical gifts, but he gave the team in turmoil its franchise quarterback for a decade and a half. If he had had better defenses throughout his career, no doubt he would have won. Atlanta Falcons, Kim McQuilkin. Even for the 1970s, McQuilkin's numbers were beyond atrocious. It also speaks to how bad the Falcons' quarterback situation was at the time that he somehow lasted 4 years with the team and started games in 3 of them. It's actually a miracle the guy somehow won 2 games as a starter. Imagine how useless the players who lost to him feel. Tough scene. Atlanta Falcons, Super Bowl 51. We're getting this one out of the way early, thankfully. There's nothing I can say that you already don't know. Atlanta took a seemingly insurmountable 28-3 lead with 1.5 quarters left. Then an onslaught of incompetence on Atlanta's part, mixed with a ton of Tom Brady's devil magic, hello Edelman catch, resulted in Atlanta losing 34-28 in overtime. In my opinion, it's the biggest choke in sports history. No offense to Latrell Spree. Atlanta Falcons, Deion Jones. The athletic marvel puts up gaudy tackling numbers, but he leaves a lot to be desired in coverage, and he also misses a large percentage of tackles for a guy who is supposed to be the stalwart of his defense. Atlanta Falcons, Michael Vick. This famous animal lover was incredible to watch and also a cultural icon. However, he was also not a very good quarterback. His best season with Atlanta actually came at age 22 in 2002, and his potential looked limitless, but he actually kept getting worse instead of better. His incredible running ability wasn't enough to overcome his inaccuracy and inability to read defenses. Atlanta Falcons, AJ Terrell. The Falcons are a pretty bad team, but somebody has to be the best, so I went with AJ Terrell. Terrell is emerging as a top 10 cornerback, which is a nice turn of events after his terrible rookie season. Opposing quarterbacks had just a 61.0 rating when targeting him last season. Atlanta Falcons, Marcus Mariota. Mariota is obviously just a stopgap at quarterback for a rebuilding team. The former number 2 overall pick has never lived up to expectations, and I don't expect him to suddenly turn his career around now. He's a below average starter, and everybody seems to realize that. Verdict, properly rated. Atlanta Falcons. You finally cut the cord on the Matt Ryan era. The man was simultaneously the only player who gave you any hope of winning every week, and also the face of the worst moment in team history. But even though Ryan is gone, 3 players from that dreadful February 2017 night remain. You will never escape it. Even if you fake your death and move to another country under a different name, it will always be there to torture you. As for 2022, you sure as fuck aren't winning anything. You have no quarterbacks, your defense is awful, and Kyle Pitts has Julio Jones disease where he shrivels up like a wet ball sack around the end zone. Cordero Patterson is fun to watch, but he's not moving the needle. No offense to Demi Lovato. Matt Ryan is not a Hall of Famer, but he would be if your team had just, not blown a 25-point lead in the last 18 minutes of the Super Bowl. Atlanta Falcons, Desmond Ridder. This is an interesting one because Ridder is either going to be the future of the franchise or he's just going to be a temporary, recent high draft pick that did not pan out in the post-Matt Ryan era for Atlanta. Based on what happened during his rookie season, it was a mixed bag at best, but still Ridder has only thrown 115 passes in his career, so it's too quick to say whether he's an absolute scrub or going to be a stud. But this isn't a video about the quality of quarterbacks, it's what they have to prove. And in terms of proving he belongs in the NFL, Ridder still has a gigantic task ahead of him. Therefore, I say his prove it rating is a 10 out of 10. Atlanta Falcons, Chris Lindstrom. Not a very sexy pick, but it is the right pick. Lindstrom is arguably the best guard in football right now, and his PFF grade supports that. He started all 17 games last year and missed only a handful of snaps. If Atlanta is going to continue to be a run-oriented team, there's really nobody else better to have at the guard position than Lindstrom. Honorable mention shout out to Grady Jarrett, who had a bit of a down year in 2022, but when right, is still one of the better defensive tackles in the league. Atlanta Falcons, 2019, Caleb McGarry. McGarry's been a consistent starter along the line over the last 4 years and has gotten better, but still falls just short of being a hit. He's mid. 2019, Chris Lindstrom. It took him some time, but Lindstrom has finally hit his stride, becoming one of the most dominant run blockers in the league. Hit 2020, AJ Terrell. Terrell had a monster 2021 season before declining slightly in 2022, but he still has a bright future. Hit 2021, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts has been good, but when you're the highest drafted tight end ever and a physical freak, we expect more than just 3 touchdowns in 2 seasons. Mid. 2022, Drake London. It's only been 1 year, but London had a very promising rookie season, so I'm going to say hit. Atlanta Falcons, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts had a respectable rookie year going for 1,000 yards, although he still had just 1 touchdown. Before last season, completely torpedoing, finishing with under 400 yards receiving and missing 7 games due to injury. If you want to live up to the hype when being picked 4th overall as a tight end like Pitts was in 2021, you better become the next Gronk or Kelsey. And so far, Pitts hasn't been anything close. Perhaps a change of scenery or a trade would help rejuvenate his career. Atlanta Falcons, 2016, Matt Ryan. I've already done a lot of videos talking about this season by Matt Ryan. He was unbelievable in terms of his consistency and efficiency. In 19 total games, including the postseason, he never had a objectively bad game. That's not to say he played great in every single game, but just looking at these numbers, he always came to play this particular season. But again, there is no video that can talk about Matt Ryan's 2016 season without mentioning how it ended. I really do think had the Falcons not had the most historic collapse in the history of football and Matt Ryan had made just 1 or 2 more plays, his 2016 season might have been the greatest season that any quarterback has ever had. Atlanta Falcons, Arthur Smith. Smith enters year 3 of his tenure in Atlanta after going 7-10 in each of his first 2 years. This was a pretty hard one to rate because I feel like Falcons owner Arthur Blank is giving him a pretty long leash. Yet at the same time, if the Falcons implode and go 3-14 or 4-13, I could see him getting fired. But I don't think another mediocre season would be enough for Blank to start over, especially considering the Falcons are in rebuilding mode. So I'm going to say Smith's hot seat ranking right down the middle, 2.5 out of 5. Atlanta Falcons. You had a 25-point lead with 18 minutes left in the Super Bowl and somehow lost. You will never live that down, even if you win a ring with the run-heavy 1980s Texas high school football ass offense Arthur Smith is trying to implement. But you Falcons fans already know this, and you wear your pain as some sick badge of honor like it's something to be proud of, when it's actually the equivalent of being proud that you regularly piss and shit yourself in public. Everybody is disgusted by you and nobody respects you. Your last star quarterback was a choking dog, and your second to last star quarterback was a dog choker. Congrats, loser.